What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Monday. Brand new work week here. Dan Kasper Show is on the air. Radio dials, you got a couple of those babies coming at you. 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also available online at sportstalk1051.com, where you can get the link for the YouTube stream. Otherwise, it's available on Facebook and Twitter as well. You got your Google and Alexa home devices, and of course the Sports Talk app. Hopefully, all had a fantastic weekend, and you're ready for another brand new work week here. Appreciate you making us part of your morning, but also part of your week. What do we got on the game plan here this morning? Well, we got a few things we're going to dabble in here. We're going to talk a little Badgers, the volleyball team. Their season ends in their match against Pitt, so Badger volleyball looking to repeat. Won't happen this year. Badger hoops, though, they beat Iowa. Iowa's down a couple of starters in the game, but nonetheless, Badgers picking up another W last night in OT against the Hawkeyes. We'll get to some Badger football talk. We've got some Badger players declaring for the draft, including Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig. So I'll touch on some Badger football. With that, speaking of football, bye week is pretty much over now for Green Bay. The final four games, the regular season. Packers, I would imagine, probably back to their normal regular schedule coming up here, even though their game is until Monday night against the Rams of Los Angeles. But after the games this past weekend, Packers' playoff chances actually increased a little bit, slightly increased a little bit there. So I think it helps with the Panthers getting the W over the Seahawks. Giants also falling. So I guess, as Aaron said, not dead yet, but we'll chat a little green and gold here. Jason Wilde from the Wisconsin State Journal, also Athletic, Masson.com, covered the Packers for numerous years, has a new piece up. He was able to catch up with Jordan Love heading into the bye week and such. And if you have the ability to check it out, it's a good article there. But obviously this coming off season, whenever that off season will come, or whether we're going to see Jordan Love play at all in these final four games coming up here. But a lot of talk is going to be about, Jordan Love's future, Aaron Rodgers' future, the future of the starting quarterback position for the green and gold. And it was a good article. And one quote from Jordan Love, or I mean a couple of quotes here. There's a few good ones here, but as he said, I think I'm just getting I just think I'm getting this opportunity to sit, learn, and not be thrown into the fire right away, and I think it'll pay off for sure. He also said, too, that if Aaron does decide to return in 23, Jordan Love said that he and his agent will, quote, talk about what's next. Now, I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe off the top of my head, Aaron and Jordan Love share an agent. I believe it's David Dunn. I believe they're still the same agent there. So, yeah, David Dunn. So, kind of an interesting connection potentially right there. You would think maybe David Dunn would know where 12's leading towards, or a little insight. Does he let Aaron know that? But that's going to be interesting. But my question, I guess, to all of you is maybe a couple of questions here. 2023, if Rodgers returns to Green Bay, what do you do with Jordan Love? Let's say, because there's the common belief that in 08, if Brett Favre would have returned for 08 to Green Bay, we know he returned, but if he would have returned to Green Bay, that Aaron Rodgers would have sought a trade or asked for a trade. So let's play this scenario out now. If Aaron Rodgers decides to return in 2023, and let's say Jordan Love requests a trade, do you honor that trade, request? Do you look to move on from it, knowing then that you'll probably have to draft a quarterback fairly high in this upcoming draft? Now, we don't know where Green Bay is going to have their draft position. If they miss out and they lose a few games here, they might be in a position to draft a quarterback fairly high. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, you got Aaron for one more year. Do you use that pick on a quarterback? It's which side? It's kind of weird when you think about it a little bit. It's maybe a little bit more difficult. But if you decide to trade Jordan Love and you honor that request, instantly your draft need for the upcoming draft, you put quarterback on there, but yet if you got one more year left with an aging guy, with an aging quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, do you address that quarterback position with your first pick, or do you try to find somebody who can contribute to your team and hopefully, give it one more shot at this thing? That's my question to all of you. It's like, do you honor the Jordan Love trade, draft another quarterback, or because, well, Green Bay has control over Jordan Love, he doesn't have a whole lot of push unless he wants to, quote, become a distraction. Green Bay could just, hey, we're going to pick up the fifth-year option. Sorry, bud, but we're going to control you, control your destiny, hold on to you. But what if you get like a second-round pick in return for Jordan Love? I don't know if you'll get a first-round pick at this point. I don't see it happening. I mean, I think if a team were to call and offer a first-round pick, then that makes things really interesting at this point. But, if it's a second-rounder, say mid-second rounder, does that make it a little bit more intriguing? Or, I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I kind of keep going back and forth on this a little bit. So that's where I kind of want to talk about this and maybe talk it out here a little bit. So we'll hit that up along with, do we talk about some potential playoff chances here for Green Bay? I mean, I know we had a little bit of fun with the playoff machine last week, but now after this weekend's games, I don't know. I mean, it all starts with Green Bay has to win out. We know that. I mean, they got to take care of business against the Rams. By the way, Packers, again, depending on which site you look at, opening up as like an 8-point favorite against the Rams on Monday night. But Miami coming off of a loss last night against the Chargers, Minnesota. You look at some of their defensive statistics. I mean, they're allowing a bunch of yards, but again, can Green Bay take advantage of that? And then maybe one of the hottest teams in the entire league, you got the Detroit Lions coming up with the final game of the regular season here. You look at it, standings wise right now for that wild card spot. Dallas, I think we all know Dallas is probably going to get one of them. Washington holding on in the 6th one. Giants holding on in the 7th, and we got Washington and Giants coming up this weekend. Seattle's there at 7-6, Detroit 6-7, and then it's Green Bay. Green Bay holds the tiebreaker over Atlanta and Carolina at this point, based off of strength of victory. Division tiebreak was initially used to eliminate Atlanta. Carolina wins tiebreak over Atlanta. Based off, it just gets down to one of those really, down the list of tiebreakers there. Only one team officially eliminated from the playoffs for the NFC, and that would be the Chicago Bears. Only one team has clinched a playoff in the NFC and in the entire NFL. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Two other teams in the AFC have been eliminated, Denver and Houston. So we'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in just a little bit. Bucks, they snapped their winning streak in a loss to the Rockets last night. But Chris Middleton left the game early due to a sprained ankle. That's the latest right now. Hopefully it's nothing that will be affecting him throughout the rest of the regular season here. But the other night, too, against the Mavericks, Kind of an exciting game there. Brooke Lopez, inbounds play at the end. That was a sweet design play. Easy inbounds play to score the game winner for the Bucks against the Mavericks the other night. So if you haven't checked that out, you should probably do yourself a favor and go check it out there. But right now with the Bucks falling to the Rockets, if you're kind of looking at it, they're still 1.5 back from the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference standings. It's pretty much Boston and Milwaukee on top. Then you got Cleveland, who's 2.5 back from the Bucks right now for that second spot, 4 games back from Boston overall. So it's been Boston and Milwaukee holding on to the top 2 spots in the Eastern Conference there. So we'll talk a little hoops with that. It is a Studs and Duds Monday. So who are your studs? Who are your duds? Can let us know with a quick tweet at DANKASPER or on Facebook, facebook.com/Kasper Sports, or on the video stream, or hit us up with a text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912. We'll do a little Monday motivation, and then we'll do a little press pass. If you had one question that you can ask anybody out there and get a legit answer, sports question to a sports person, what would that question be? Let me know. Let's get some good ones out there, all right? So, plenty to get to here this morning. Let's get into it. All right. Let's jump into it. So bye week is in the books. All right. Bye week is in the books. Last quarter of the season for the Green and Gold. Last quarter, last 4 games here. They're not out of it yet, although if you believe in the percentages and that sort of stuff, the Athletic gave them, bumped them up, I should say, to an 11.7% chance at making the postseason here. So, moving up a little bit there. And maybe I'm trying to be too optimistic in this thing. I know, again, like I said just a little bit ago, we had a little bit of fun, doing that playoff machine sort of thing. But you kind of look at it, with Seattle. And right now, Seattle is not in the postseason race. Is that correct? Yeah, so you kind of look at them. Could Green Bay jump over them? They got a tough schedule coming up. Giants, tough schedule coming up. Washington, tough schedule coming up. Could it be possible? Could they actually do this thing? Could they squeak in? Won't matter unless they take care of their own business at this point, but never say never. How do you see this last quarter of the season for Green Bay playing out here? How do you see this last quarter of the season? If you had to look into your crystal balls, how do you see this thing playing out? And then going back to the question I have for you all, if it came to that point in the offseason where, let's say Aaron returns or decides he wants to return, and then you've got Jordan Love. He's like, you know what? Been sitting for a few years. I'd like to be traded. Would you honor that trade, or what would it take for you to honor that trade? Maybe that's the best question to throw out there. What would it take for you to honor Jordan Love's request if he were to say that he wanted a trade? What would it take? Second round pick? Maybe we'll just take you a third round pick. And try to, I know everybody's kind of got their own personal feelings about Jordan Love and that sort of thing and the whole situation, personal feelings against Aaron Rodgers and such. But try to view this from a business side of things, all right? Try to view this as like, what would be the best business decision? Not necessarily your personal feelings towards one or the other. Like, well, I'll just trade him for a bag of donuts or something. Okay, come on. Your the best business decision in your opinion. What would it be? Think about that for a couple minutes. Let me know. Okay? So a couple questions I'm throwing out to you right away on this Monday morning. How do you see this last quarter of the season playing out? Are you starting to maybe kind of get your hopes up a little bit about a potential playoff spot? Maybe? They're sucking you in here a little bit, or are you like, nah, let's get through the Rams first? Or maybe it's Miami. It's like, all right, you know what? They beat the Rams or Miami, then I'll start to get into it. At what point do you kind of maybe start to get sucked into this thing and like, God, they're pulling me back into this thing? Maybe if they win the next two and then they finish up against two division opponents, Minnesota and Detroit. Let me know. All right, we'll take that first break, and then coming up, we'll get to the opening drive. Bye weeks in the books. Throwing a few things out at you. Let me know. I'm curious to get your responses. All right, we'll be back after these quick messages. Mark it on your calendars. Next Friday already. Holy moly. December 23rd. We're going to be at the Do Dodge doing the show for our Festivus edition. Airing of grievances, feats of strength, all that good stuff. Metal pulls, you name it. We're going to do a live over there from 6A to 9A at the Do Dodge here in Eau Claire. Stop on by. I've got some tickets, good for one free tap beer. And then we'll do a podcast live party from 2 to 3 p.m. as well. So we'll be back later in the day to do a quick podcast, live podcast and such. But it's our Festivus edition, but also kind of a little holiday party for the best listeners that are out there, all the best supporters out there. So stop on by if you're able to. Maybe if you got the day off, or maybe get off a little bit early, or before you head over to work or something. Maybe quick hire, that sort of stuff. But put it on your calendars. All right, December 23rd. We'll do our Festivus and holiday edition of the show live from the Do Dodge, and then of course the podcast episode from 2 to 3 p.m. that day. Hopefully, a lot of you can make it on over. All right. Hopefully you can all stop on out. All right, let's get things rolling here this morning, shall we? I believe also, too, I forgot to mention, we'll catch up with our good buddy, Justice Cleveland, sports director extraordinaire, WEAU 13 News. We'll catch up on some of the college and prep stuff with him coming up in the next hour. But let's get things rolling here on that opening drive. So I threw a couple of things out at you to get your minds trying to work here this morning, early in the morning here on a Monday. I know, might be asking a little too much here, but we'll try to get this thing going here. So, but couple parts. Last quarter of the season now officially underway for Green. I know we got a Monday night game, but I'm talking about like Green Bay and such. So we got last quarter of the season. How do you see this playing out? Or when are you, or maybe you're just like, nah, nothing. But what would get you? What would get you to kind of maybe get into the play? Like, could Green Bay actually get into this playoff? Like, at what point in these next 4 games? At what point in these next 4 games will it get you to like, all right, I'm gonna get on that playoff wagon. Let's go through this. Is it after the Rams, leading into a Christmas Day game against Miami? Is it, you know what? If they win the next 2, and then they start in their final 2 against Minnesota and Detroit, if they win their next 2, if they beat the Rams and they beat Miami in Miami on Christmas, I'll start to get into that playoff, like they got a shot to do this type of mode. At what point will you get to that? At what point will you get, or maybe you're like, last game of the season, if they got a shot, and if they win, they're in. Could be just as simple as that too. Were you starting to kind of like maybe get that itch, and you're starting to scratch it a little bit there? What point? You got the Rams, you got Miami, Green Bay. I mean, 3 of their final 4 at Lambeau. I don't know how much that actually means anymore. I mean, look at the playoffs last couple years. But, yeah. I got 3 out of 4. I mean, almost every team would. I think every team would like to finish up their last quarter of the season 3 out of the 4 games at home there. So, but the other question I'm throwing out to you. So again, Jason Wilde, Wisconsin State Journal, has covered the Packers for numerous years. Was able to catch up with Jordan Love, and one of the things that Jordan Love said in his sit down was that if Aaron does decide to come back in 2023, that's something that him and his agent will have to talk about. And him and Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers share the same agent, so should be a good conversation. But business decision only. Keep the personal feelings aside, okay? Keep them aside. What would you do if it came to the point of 2023? Aaron says, I'm coming back for 1 more year. I'm coming back for 1 more year. Jordan's like, cool, great, I want out. What do you do? In terms of a business decision, what do you do? You can go about it a bunch of different ways. You trade Aaron, you trade Jordan Love. All right, but you know what? Now quarterback has really jumped up in the need for the upcoming draft. You got Aaron coming back for another year. Do you go and get a player that maybe helps you on the field for right away? Maybe try to go for it for another year, even though they tried to do that this year? Or do you draft a quarterback even though it's not going to help your quarterback out in his final year? Or do you hold on to Jordan Love? Maybe he's a little upset. Maybe he's a little bit annoyed. But what are you going to do? That's a business decision, right? Jordan Love is not scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent until 2025. That is if Green Bay picks up his fifth-year option. And that fifth-year option, I mean, it's going to be a big cap hit. It would be in 2024. Okay? 2023, Jordan's cap hit is $3.9 million. Dead cap hit would be just $3.14 million, according to Spot Track here. If it were me, and the other part in this question too would be like, what would get you from a business decision standpoint to move on from Jordan Love? Like, this offseason, what would be the offer that would get you to pull the trigger and be like, all right, let's move on from this? I'm trying to think of like a comparison, and maybe it's like Jimmy G is the closest one when he was with New England. He was a second-round pick. Late second-round pick by the Patriots. He got some games in as a starter. And then the Patriots traded him to the 49ers, I think for the first second-round pick, or it was a high second-round pick. So they actually improved, their what they invested into Jimmy G at that point. Got a high second-round pick in return. I would be shocked if a team offered a first-round pick for Jordan Love. Maybe it's a team in the back end of the first round. I don't know. I mean, I think if it were a first-round pick, then you're like, okay. We got to think about this. First-round pick, all right. I like it. That's something to get there. But what if it's a second-round pick? And I know it's, Jordan Love was first-round pick in that, but I feel like his stock maybe not as high as what Jimmy G's was when Jimmy G was in New England. I don't know. That's just me. But I think if it were me, if I'm Goody, if I'm Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst, and season's over with, doesn't end in a championship, let's assume it doesn't win a championship. I know that's far-reaching out there. But they head in the offseason, early 2023. It's February or March or whatever before free agency. Let's say it's the end of February. Aaron's like, I'm coming back. This will be my final year. And, Aaron could change his mind, too. It'd be like, he might say it's his final year, but then he pulls a good old Farvey, and, he's like, at the end of the year, it's like, no, I want to come back for another year. I'm feeling good. I'm playing at a high level. So there's a lot of trust involved in that thing. But Aaron's like, all right, I'm coming back. Let's do this thing. Now you're Goody. Jordan Love's agent, who's the same agent as Rodgers, says, at one point, Rodgers' agent, David Dunn's pumped. His guy's coming back. He's getting a big paycheck. But then he's got to deal with the other quarterback on that roster. It's like, okay, no. All right, great, celebrate. But now we got to figure out something here. Jordan Love wants out. He wants trade. He wants out of there. Goody, what do you do with that? Are you worried about, does it cause like a distraction or anything like that? Do you honor that trade? I think if it was just based purely off of a business decision, if it were me, just my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer in this. But my opinion, be like, Jordan, we understand your frustrations. We understand you want to play. I mean, everybody wants to play. I don't care what level you're in. If it's sixth grade basketball, you want to be the starter. You want to be playing. You want to get some minutes. Or, I would want the guys to play. So, yeah, there's probably a little frustration boiling from him. Like, I've been around for a few more years. I want to play. Be like, Jordan, I understand it. You want to play. You want to get in the field. We believe in you. We believe you are a starter in this league. We believe you're a high-quality starter in this league. But we are not going to honor your trade request right now. We're not honoring that. We're looking at this from a business side, a business decision. We're going to go with 12. We're going to go into the year of 2023 with 12. You're going to be the backup for another year. And then 2024, we're picking up your fifth-year option. You're going to get a nice pay increase, nice little payday there for the final year. And you're going to go into that final year under that fifth-year option. You're going to be the starter. You're going to be getting some snaps, and you have that opportunity to earn a big contract. I mean, think about it. 2024. Let's say the reins are handed to Jordan Love in 2024. He's playing under that fifth-year option. He's playing in a contract year. Kind of like Lamar Jackson here a little bit, right? He's got a hell of an opportunity to go out there. 1 year. 1 year is all it will take. 1 year starting, and he could make the dough. He goes out there 2024, has a solid year, putting up some solid numbers. I'm not talking MVP or anything like that, but he goes out there and he makes bank. But we're me, if I'm Goody and I'm looking at this as a business decision, I understand the frustration. Guy wants to play, but business-wise, you know what? We're not going to honor your trade request right now, Jordan. Unless we get like a ridiculous offer that's like we'd be an idiot to say no to. Going to have a high asking price. That would be me. That would just be me. Unless it was a deal, I'm talking like a first-round pick. I mean, if it's an early second-round pick, then I might have to ponder that a little bit too. Really would have to. But I'd be like, at this point, I'm not ready to move on. I'm talking straight up business decision. I don't want personal decisions to affect this, whether your personal feelings against one another, but that would be my decision. That would be my decision. But it is kind of weird. I never would have thought. I never, ever would have thought that heading into 2023, could we be in a similar position to what we were in 2008? I never would have thought that would have been the case. And there's a bunch of different factors that are playing into this thing. It's, we wouldn't be in this if maybe Jordan Love wasn't drafted. We wouldn't. I know we wouldn't be in this case if Jordan Love wasn't drafted. You add on what happened a couple years ago with the whole, Aaron not reporting or not showing up to mini camps, and that did report finally the day before training camp, and the presser afterwards. I mean, there's been a lot of crap, a lot of drama in the last couple years here. But if you would have told me in 2008 we're going to do this again in 2023, 15 years later, I would have said there's no way that's going to happen. And it's kind of setting up to be that way. It's kind of set up because if I had the courage and an indisposable income, I'd put some money down. I think Aaron's back next year. I think he is, but I never would have thought a similar situation. Now, I don't think Aaron's going to pull the whole retiring and then come back thing. That's the big difference between, potentially 2023 and 2008, obviously. That's the big difference. But the fact that we're talking about, an aging quarterback, a veteran quarterback, a youngster waiting to get his chance after sitting for a few years, I never thought we would be at that point again. And here we are, 15 years or so later, happening again, potentially. A little bit different, I understand that, but here we are. All right, so the last 4 games of the season, at what point will get you to kind of like start to fall into that into that hole, or maybe onto that wagon and be like, oh, Green Bay can actually maybe do this thing when it gets to the postseason. Can they actually do it? At what point with these last 4 games? Because their playoff chances did improve after the weekend's games. Seattle losing, Giants losing. Detroit's red hot right now. I mean, Detroit's above them in the standings, so don't discredit Detroit here, baby. But you're looking at this thing, and you're looking at the upcoming schedules for some of the teams that are ahead of Green Bay right now. When you look at, let's start with the Commanders. All right, their upcoming schedule. They've got the Giants. Okay, then they got the 49ers. Brock Purdy. How about that guy? I mean, if you're a card collector, you're probably going through your stashes of guys that didn't make your binders or your sleeves and trying to see if you got a rookie card of this kid, because I actually looked it up on eBay yesterday. I was reminded, like, I kept thinking of the Jeremy Lin. Remember when Jeremy Lin Sanity with the Knicks and his card? He had that great game, great couple games that just exploded in value on like eBay and such. Go to eBay, you look up Brock. Yeah, there's some people trying to take advantage of that right now. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars here. But you look at Washington. Okay, they got the Giants, Sunday Night Football, the 18th. Then they got the 49ers in San Fran. Then they got the Browns coming to town, which is kind of I don't know how to make out that game. And then they finish up with the Cowboys. Cowboys might be playing. Yeah, that's a tough one, though. Because if the Cowboys just have that 5th spot locked up, you don't know how they're going to play that one. It all depends on, because they can't get any higher. If Philly wins a division, Cowboys, they can't get any higher than 5th. So that's a tough one to gauge at this point. Then you look at the Giants' upcoming schedule. Washington, Minnesota, at Minnesota. Then they got the Colts. And then they finish up at the Eagles. But again, are the Eagles going to be playing, their starters in that final game? That's that age-old question. How much do you play your starters in the final game when you probably have a bye week 2? Is 2 weeks off too much? Do you play your starters for a little bit? Do you play them for the whole game? You're going to hear that whole debate playing out again. It's gonna pop up again with Philadelphia. And you've got examples from other teams that, I mean, if there was one right answer, everybody would do that thing, but there's not. You have examples of both sides. So, I mean, Washington, Giants, kind of a difficult schedule, right? A little bit there. Then you look at Seattle, who are currently above the Packers. Who do they got on a short week here? 49ers. Then they got the Chiefs in Kansas City. Then they got the Jets coming to town. And then they finish up against the Rams. 49ers, Chiefs, even Jets. Tough games. And you look at the red-hot Detroit Lions, who are, yes, above Green Bay in the standings right now. They've got the Jets at New York. That might be the Lions' biggest game in like the last few years here. It's a huge game for the Lions. They get that W, you're feeling pretty good about your playoff chances. But then, I mean, don't overlook them. After the Jets, they got to go to Carolina. Carolina wins out. They've got something to play for. Carolina wins out. Carolina wins the division. Thanks to the Buccaneers getting shellacked by the 49ers yesterday. So Carolina controls their destiny. That actually is an intriguing game for Christmas Eve. Then you got the Bears at the Lions. And then, of course, Lions-Packers. Who would have thunk it? Lions-Packers, potentially. Maybe. Could it be that the winner of that game maybe gets a playoff spot? But it all depends on whether Green Bay can win out. Got to take care of your own business and let everything else fall where they may. So, how do you see these last 4 weeks playing out? Where at what point do you start to be like, all right, I'm kind of getting sucked back into this whole playoff thing? Is it after the Rams game if they beat the Rams? Is it after okay, if they beat the Rams and they beat Miami, I'm in. Let's go. Let's do this. Last 2 games against division opponents, Minnesota and Detroit, let's do it. Or maybe you're already at that point. Maybe you're already, I'm sucked in right now. I'm playing with that playoff machine. I'm coming up with different scenarios, trying to figure this thing out. I'm in it already, man. What point are you at? Think about that for a little bit and let me know. All right. We got to take a quick break. We'll hit that up. We got some hoops talk as well. Busy weekend for the Badgers, Bucks. Got to hit those 2 up too as well. Holidays are here, so what are you asking for Santa this year, or what's on the wish list from your friends and family? How about this year we ask or we give something that we actually need or that we're going to use for once. Talking about getting that new tires to replace those bald ones on Aunt Sally's car, or a new battery so your buddy Rich isn't always looking for someone to jumpstart his vehicle, or maybe you're in the market for that hard to find auto part for that vehicle you're restoring yourself. You know what makes a great stocking stuffer? Getting an oil change. Now we know that doesn't fit necessarily in stocking, but you get the idea. All that and more can be accomplished with a quick stop at ASAP Used Auto Parts. ASAP Used Auto Parts is your go-to place when it comes to finding the best deals on tires, batteries, and those hard to find, high quality used auto parts. Plus, even do oil changes. So this holiday season, ask and give something that truly matters. Taking care of your vehicle. Let ASAP Used Auto Parts help make it a very Merry Christmas for you, your family, and your friends and your vehicle. All right, let's do a little what do we at here? Somebody's messing with my board again. All right, motivational Monday time. I am picking the Detroit Lions for my motivational Monday right now. You look at this ball club. It was what, maybe a month, 2 months ago. People were already assuming Dan Campbell was going to be fired. He was going to be out, going to be let go. And you look at this ball club right now. They're 6-7, and they're in this playoff hunt right now. Another win yesterday against the Minnesota Vikings, 34-23. A week before that, dominating the Jaguars 40-14. Falling just short against the Buffalo Bills a couple weeks ago, 28-25. Before that, they beat the Giants, they beat the Bears, they beat the Packers. I mean, this Lions team, if you are a Lions fan, I don't know, I'm feeling pretty motivated about my future, the future of my team here. I'm feeling pretty motivated with this thing. You know, it was down earlier because of, well, it was looking pretty bleak. They were losing, they were going through that, what was it, 5-game losing streak? Yeah, heading into that Green Bay game, they were on a 5-game losing streak. It wasn't looking good. You had a 29-0 loss against the Patriots, 24-6 loss against the Cowboys. Fell just short against Miami, 31-27. It was that Packers game that kind of changed it around here a little bit. So if I'm a Lions fan, I'm feeling pretty good maybe for the first time in a long time. I mean, there's some players on this ball club where you got to be feeling, all right, let's go. I mean, you got St. Brown, the young wide receiver, who, I mean, I think he's proven to be a pretty darn good wide receiver. We saw Javison Williams get his first touchdown catch yesterday. Touchdown catch. One catch, 41 yards on 2 targets, got his touchdown. The first round pick, a wide receiver coming back from an ACL injury. You know, you're looking on defense. You got Aiden Hutchinson over there, second overall pick. I mean, there's players on this roster that you got to be feeling pretty good about. And then you kind of look at, Jared Goff. Everybody assumes that the Lions are going to go into this thing maybe this year and target a quarterback. I've been talking about that the last couple of years. But you look at Jared Goff. He's 8th in the league in passing yards, 3,352. He's thrown 22 touchdown passes to just 7 interceptions. He's got the 6th highest QBR right now in the entire league. So, I mean, how much do you actually put in need at getting one of the top quarterbacks in this upcoming draft if you're the Lions? You've got a couple of young stud wide receivers that you're excited about. They traded TJ Hawkinson earlier this year, which kind of maybe thought for a lot of people is like, oh, they're going to do this and they're losing one of their better playmakers. But I think a question now for the Lions, and say what you want about Jared Goff and such, but numbers don't lie. And Jared Goff is having a solid season this year. Let's give the guy credit to where credit's due. He's having a solid year, and I think it's maybe kind of putting a little bit of pause here for Detroit in terms of like, okay, how much do we actually want to really target, CJ Stroud or or not CJ Stroud, but like Caleb, any of those young quarterbacks coming into the to the draft this year. Like a CJ Stroud from Ohio State or something like that. You know, they had a couple of Ohio. They like their Big Ten players. I don't know. I think it does put a little bit of a pause on it, though. Be interesting. Last couple years, everybody just kind of thought Lions are going to target a quarterback, going to target a quarterback high in a draft, and they haven't. And right now, they're playing some good football, and they easily can make this thing. Perhaps though, this game coming up with the Jets, maybe their biggest game in the last few years here. But shout out to Dan Campbell and his crew, that team, they're grinding it out and they're making things interesting down the stretch. So my motivational Monday, I go with the Lions because if I'm a Lions fan, I'm motivated about my team and the potential prospects of the future of this team. That's my pick. All right, shot clock's gonna cut me off here. We'll catch up with JC and EC coming up after some sports nuggets of the day to kick off the second hour. We'll catch up on some of the college and the local stuff. We'll get to some hoops talk. Bucks losing to the Rockets last night. Chris Middleton sprained ankle. Get the latest on that. Talk some Badgers. Their volleyball run ends. Badger hoops did beat Iowa yesterday in OT. Iowa was down a couple of starters, but nonetheless, Badger hoops. I got to imagine that when the newest AP polls come out, maybe the Badgers will be in that top 25. Badger football. We got some players, more players declaring for the NFL draft, including Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig. So we'll touch on a little Badger football coming up as well. One in. We got 2 more hours to go. Stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes after this news update. Second hour kicking off on this Monday morning of December 12th. Appreciate you tuning in, however, wherever you may be tuning in. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk some Badgers. Plenty to catch up on with the University of Wisconsin Badgers volleyball team. They're out of the tournament, so their title defense ending with a loss to Pitt. Badger hoops getting another victory, this time against Iowa last night. We've got more Badger football players deciding to declare for the NFL draft and such. So we've got plenty to catch up on when it comes to the Badgers. We'll talk a little Bucks, throw that in there as well. We'll get back to a little more green and gold talk coming at you too. How do you see these last four games, this last quarter of the season playing out? At what point do you maybe kind of start to fall into that playoff trap here? Their odds improved a little bit yesterday, and we just went through the schedules of the other teams that are ahead of them. Never say never, but at what point? Is it after if they beat the Rams, you're like, all right, I'm in? Or is it after Miami, or maybe it's going to take you all the way until that Detroit game? But let me know, okay? Let me know. Hit me up with a text, tweet, Facebook, video, however you want to do it. TikTok, Instagram, it don't matter. Guy who's very popular on TikTok this morning, Mr. JC and EC, Justice Cleveland. Good morning, sir. How are you? I don't know.
Yes, just hugely popular on TikTok.
You do, right? I thought I've seen some of your videos over there.
I do have a TikTok account. I won't say popular, nor have I posted anything in probably I don't know, 6-7 months, but still, it does exist. So
right,
yes,
see, there you go.
Go seek it out. You will be very disappointed.
Before we catch up on some of the local stuff here, we got some sports nuggets of the day brought to you by ANC Insurance. And this one, in 1899, Justice, you could blame this individual for maybe a lot of your income going to. George Grant patented the wooden golf tee. So there you go. A lot of broken tees over the years. A lot of money probably thrown in there. 1899, it was patented, though, the wooden golf tee. So what they used beforehand? Nothing? Probably right off the bat.
Yeah. No, it was sand.
Oh, was it?
They had a little thing they take kind of like a shot glass. They would put it on, take a scoop of sand, put it down, and that's what they used as like a tee.
How about that? I did not know that. So, all right, you could go home for the rest of the day, Justice. You just brought everything to the table. So I
dropped all the knowledge I have.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Interesting. And yet we still suck at bunker shots. So, or at least I do.
Yeah.
Me too. Let's go with Joe Namath, 1976, played his last game with the New York Jets. 1981, Wayne Gretzky became the quickest to reach 50 goals in a season. It was in the 39th game. We've got 2000, the Texas Rangers signed Alex Rodriguez to a record-breaking 10-year, $252 million contract. I remember that day. I remember seeing that on the bottom line of the mothership when that thing happened.
Yeah, that was just ungodly huge for the time, and so huge that the Rangers actually couldn't handle it and had to trade him to the Yankees.
Right. How about this day, 2010, the collapse of the inflatable roof at the Metrodome caused the cancellation of a game between the Giants and the Vikings.
That was 10 years ago? 12 years ago?
12 years ago, yeah.
That was because then they played at TCF or...
No, they played at Detroit. That's when...
Oh, yeah.
Because Favre didn't play in that game. If you remember, that ended the streak.
Yep. Yeah, and then they played at TCF, and it was just, like, frozen because it wasn't built for playing it that late in the year.
Yep. Is that when Favre got the concussion, too, or he got hit really hard, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I just remember, like, seeing him there. I'm like, oh, my goodness. Like, that was probably one of the hardest hits I think he took in his career.
Yeah.
For a guy who took a lot of hard hits. Yeah. He took it on the frozen turf, if I'm not mistaken, too. So, yeah, that was not a fun time for the Vikings fans. Pretty much like this weekend was not a fun time for the Vikings fans.
Yep. Those are just some of your sports nuggets of the day for December 12th coming at you. All right, Justice. I know you've been really busy in the last week since we last caught up with you. I mean, we had, this weekend, was it the North Wrestling invite was going on too, I believe.
Yes,
over there.
that went on Saturday afternoon. That went on, and bunch of big teams from both here and Minnesota coming on over to North when that invite, 59th, I believe it was.
Man.
Continues to grow and get bigger and get, a lot more prestige and respect around the state. So that's good. It's very good for the sport.
That's always kind of a nice, like I almost view that as almost like the kickoff to wrestling season too. Like it's early in the season and it kind of, I don't know, I might be the only one, but I always like, because I was talking to Brandon about it a few weeks ago. I'm like, that's going to be coming up, right? And lo and behold, yeah, it was this past weekend. So they do a good job with that over there. No doubt about it.
Jake Rebin's he is a big ambassador for the sport of wrestling in the area. And yeah, he does a really good job just getting the word out about it. And yeah, I mean, it's great to have something huge like that and keep that sport growing.
Definitely. Also too, I mean, I know the other day you were checking out some hockey again at Hobbs, as you mentioned a couple weeks ago. That's your winter home of the season, but it was, was it the Memorial and Hudson game that you were checking out?
Yes, and a good win for Memorial in conference play as they got the 3-2 victory over the Raiders. I would say this Hudson did have, I think that was talking to some of the play-by-play guys. They had 8 kids out with sickness, which tends to happen around the holiday, post-Thanksgiving, kind of that time of year. But Memorial came out and just was, relentless, especially in the first period. Hudson battled back the last 2 and, credit having to bring some kids up from JV to fill up their lines. But that was fun. And I've said this before, the Big Rivers this year is going to be fun day in, day out, all the games. I mean, it's at the top pretty well evenly matched. And, Chi High keeps winning as well. North got a good victory over Rice Lake also on Thursday. And so, yeah, there's some good matchups we're going to see. And it always is like that, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really, really fun hockey season.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt. And I know this past weekend too, speaking of big invites, but that was the Northwest Tip-Off Classic this past weekend too, wasn't it?
Yes. Yep. At UW Stout, a ton of games going on there. So yeah, that kind of like feels like maybe the unofficial start of the boys basketball season too, when you get those big tip-off tournaments pre-holiday as well. So yeah, I mean it's what you kind of live for this time of year, is just getting these kind of non-conference matchups going on. So and had Fall Creek versus Prescott, 2 ranked teams in the state. Prescott got the win 81-71, but that shows how good that Fall Creek team is too. And Prescott's very talented, and yeah, that was a good early season matchup to see.
Definitely. And I saw, was it North fell to Chippewa Falls, since we're talking boys basketballs, just a few nights ago too, in a Big Rivers matchup.
Yeah. Good battle there as well. Yeah, getting these rivalry games going on early on in the season. So yeah, I mean, it's a really fun time of year. Right. It really is. When you come to it, and we're in conference play now, and basketball, this winter season's long, but it's kind of neat how it's broken up with these early season. And then you get the holidays, kind of a 2.5 week lull, and then you get back right into it. So yeah, I mean, we're already in the thick of it for the winter.
Yeah. Definitely. I want to ask.
It's meteorological winter. So thank you, Darren Meyer.
Thank you. I want to ask you about coming up here in just a second about this proposed conference realignment thing coming up here. But before that, I wanted to highlight a couple of Blue Gold things too, because going back back to the 8th, a big moment, I think, in the wrestling program for the Blue Goals Justice, when they beat Whitewater 20-19. I mean, you look at the last few years of this wrestling program, they've just gotten better and better every year, more, athletes getting involved and such, but that had to have been a signature win. Blue Goals were ranked 9th, and Whitewater was ranked 8th in that, and they got that victory.
Yes. I mean, you get a battle of top 10 WIC schools, and the Blue Goals, like you said, that program has just every step, every year, just gotten better and better. And this is just another part of them showing them their face on the national stage, to get into the top 10. That was their first ever top 10 ranking. And then to come back and prove it against Whitewater. And if there's anybody who ever has a target on their back in the WIAC for anything, it's Whitewater.
Yep.
Yeah, the Blue Golds went out there and proved it. And then, this week they host lacrosse on Wednesday. So a good chance there, if anybody wants to, get out there and see them and see what it's all about, because the hype is well worth it, because this team, Tim Fader, has done a great job of just building this program into what it is now, and it's a top 10 program in the country.
Yeah, you mentioned Coach Fader. I mean, he does come over from Whitewater, where he was
Right.
at a little bit earlier. But I mean, you just kind of look at the record and where they've finished ever since he's been there, and it's gotten better and better. And yeah, it's first time to be in the top 10, and the commitment to this program. I mean, even the coaching staff has expanded with this program too. So things are cooking over there.
Yeah, and that's a credit also to UW Eau Claire, the facilities that they've provided with them, and just growing the team and giving them that opportunity to get better. And they've done a really good job of just allowing that team to really come into its own. And with the facilities, with the coaches, with the recruits that they have coming in. And yeah, it really has. It has taken what was, it's just transformed this program into now a top 10 and probably top 5 soon here. If you can defeat Whitewater like that, you're going to probably just keep on moving up the rankings.
Other sports from this weekend for the Blue Golds. Blue Gold men's hockey, they couldn't hang with your alma mater, Stevens Point, losing both those games 6-2 and then 3-2 in overtime on the 10th.
Yeah, tough battles. It's tough going to the Willett and playing Point. It's just a tough atmosphere to be in. But to come back and almost get the win at home, Blue Gold's team's going to be fine. And you hate losing the conference points, but I think it shows just how talented this hockey team is. With their games that they had against Superior and River Falls, and I mean they've had a tough schedule the last couple of weeks. They had St. Norbert trip as well, so I think they're going to have this break here and come back in the second half. And I think this team's definitely still got the potential to make a run for an NCAA appearance.
And then the women's team with the disappointing loss against Loras and Iowa there, because the women's team was ranked 9th, if memory serves me correct.
Yes. Yep. And just one of those games where it looked like Loras was hot and kept shooting and kept hitting. And, do you put up 79 points, especially if you're the Blue Golds, you probably expect to win a game. You don't expect to give up 88 points. So one of those games, Tanya, again, just has this team go play really tough non-conference games. And, Loras was another one of those. So it's a team they'll learn from it. They always do. I mean, Jesse Rudin putting up 30 points, just doing what Jesse Rudin does. But unfortunately, from the bench, they only got 15 points, and that was from 2 players. So, yeah, I think that it'll be one of those games that Tanya will go back, look at, and it's going to help this team going on. I still think this team has so much potential to be one of the best in the nation and have a chance at a run in the NCAA tournament.
All right. So back to the prep stuff. So one of the biggest, I think, storylines from late last week was this proposal about proposed conference realignment that it's only for football, though, right, Justice? This is only for football here. But I think the big thing that would affect the Chippewa Valley here is the potential that the Big Rivers Conference, that maybe we won't see some of the rivalries. Can you explain this a little bit more?
So what would end up happening is that the Big Rivers in the Valley from the central Wisconsin would form one conference with 2 divisions, so an East and a West.
Okay.
And Memorial and North would be on the east side. Then Chippewa Falls, Hudson, and Menominee would all get shifted to the west side. So, I mean, I can kind of break it down real quick. The East would be DC Everest, Memorial, North, Marshfield, Stevens Point, Rapids, and West. And then the west side, Wausau West. Then on the west side of I shouldn't have said those back to back, but the west side of that would be Chippewa Falls, Hudson, Menominee, New Richmond, Rice Lake, River Falls, and Superior. And if you notice, Rice Lake would be a team added back to the Big Rivers as they were in the middle border last year. So in my mind, I think it's Rice Lake wanting to get back into the Big Rivers after being in the middle border. That's how they would get there, because they're one of the teams that proposed this.
Okay.
So that would be the biggest movement in all of this. I mean, there are the Lakeland Conference would disappear, and the Heart of the North would have a small and large sub-conference, or however you want to call it.
Okay.
And then the Heart of the North small would play Dunn St. Croix teams in one crossover game. So that's how that would be absorbed. So it's changes. And again, this is just the first step. Nothing here is written into stone. The earliest it could be adopted or they would agree on this and vote on it would be March. But I think it can go to it until May, I believe. So, and this would be for the 24-25 season. So 2 years from now.
Okay. And do you think this is the main reason? And this is something we've heard about for maybe the last couple of years, is the main reason, or maybe the main driving point, is to get Rice Lake back in the big rivers. Do you think that's the main thing for this?
That's what it seems like to me. I can't confirm that,
right?
But just from looking at it, I think it feels like that, that would be getting Rice Lake back with a lot of the traditional football rivalries that they have. I feel like they're, size wise, they're a perfect fit for the middle border.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you had it when River Falls was out of the big rivers. They wanted to get back in because I don't think the travel wise this helps Rice Lake all that much,
right?
From the middle border, because then you're going to be driving. I mean, you substitute an Ellsworth for a Hudson. You have Somerset instead of Somerset. You're going to New Richmond. You're going to River Falls. So these are still schools that are far away. So I think a lot of it's trying to get back into the big rivers. But again, I think we'll find more and more on this as it goes out.
Oh no, I was going to ask, like, I know this is just football, but would this be similar to like the Clover Belt Conference then, where you got like the two sides, like for basketball and such?
For basketball, yes. I mean, they would play they only play one crossover game, so you would get Memorial and Chippewa Falls, but I doubt they could schedule that as their one every year.
Right.
That's one of the oldest rivalries in the state.
Yeah.
And you would break that up. So from what I'm hearing, I don't know. I think a lot of the people in the big rivers there's going to be a lot of input, put it that way, to the WIAA about this. What ends up causing this is that Wausau East no longer is fielding a 11-man football team.
Oh, really? Okay, I did not know that. So
they would be out. That's where you have the problem with the Valley, is that they don't have another team.
Okay.
I'm trying to make sure I got this right.
That's interesting. That Wausau, I mean, that's a big area over there too.
Actually, right now, they have them in the Great Northern.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be the Wausau. I know Wausau East has had problems. I mean, they've had problems with numbers. But yeah, so they would have Wausau East in the Great Northern, which that's the numbers thing right there.
Right.
Whereas Wausau East, the numbers wise, they're fallen. With enrollment, they've fallen that far down, where they're not in the same grouping as like a DC Everest and a Wausau West.
Okay.
So that's more what I think. I'm glad I found that. So any corrections you can send to my Twitter account there. But yeah, I wanted to make sure I had that right. But yeah, Wausau East would move to the Great Northern, so they're in a smaller conference.
That's with Medford and Mosinee and Rylander and such.
Yeah.
So
if you think about it, I mean, it's all about enrollment numbers, being able to be competitive. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. The only thing that's, with this is that we're going to get this every 4 some years, because that's how long, the conference realignment every 4 years. In football, they're going to go back and look at it. Somebody's not going to be happy.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a perfect plan for any of these. And we saw that with the first go round when they did it. You had River Falls having to play in the Mississippi Valley, and they didn't like that. You get these traditional rivalries. So I think you got to find a way to work it. So if you're going to do the split, you can't split up Chippewa Falls, Memorial, and North. It makes no sense. These are teams that are 10 miles apart from each other.
Right. Exactly.
And to have them playing in different conferences doesn't make sense. But who do you switch?
Right.
And there really isn't it's going to have to be somebody from that other, from the Valley.
Yeah. Man, I feel like this is going to be like a thing almost every year, every couple of years too, because like you said, a lot of it would depend on enrollment, not just this conference, but other conferences.
Right. And the thing is that from the Valley wise, none of those teams are going to want to go over and play over here all the time.
Right.
So you're either making one of these teams from our area, those two teams, North and Memorial, have to drive over and play the Wausau area teams, or you're going to make somebody from the Valley go over and play the Hudson and Menominee. So I don't know. I think, again, first go around with this, like the first draft, we'll see what the input is, and we'll see. I think in January there's another meeting for input.
Okay.
And they'll hopefully have we'll take another look at it, and we'll see what the conference's reactions were to this.
Yeah, interesting. But like you said too, it's not going to make everybody happy, whatever decision's made. So
yeah, and then they're trying to keep it balanced. They're trying to get those 8-man or 8-team conferences, so everything's balanced and you play all those the same amount of games instead of having, throwing in those smaller conferences that are broken up. And again, 8-player football is growing as well, and you're losing teams from the 11-man side, so you have to compensate and try to get these new conferences just to make it to keep the competitive balance.
Oh, something to watch in the next month or so, huh, JC?
Yeah, so isn't it fun stuff to talk about? It's like it's like doing math.
Right? No kidding. All right. Appreciate you breaking that down for us there, big guy. So, tell you what, let's take a really quick break. And then coming up, we'll catch up on some Badger stuff here, throw in some Bucks talk, and then get back to some football talk here, too, because I want to get Justice's thoughts on one of the questions that we threw out there about Jordan Love and maybe his potential future with that article from Jason Wilde from the Wisconsin State Journal. So, really quick break, and then we'll catch up on some Badger stuff, throwing a little Bucks talk, and then we'll get back to football talk after these quick words. Did forget one sports nugget that I should be bringing up here. It was a big one in 1980. Brewers acquired Raleigh Fingers, Ted Simmons. I think it was just the other day too. It was the anniversary of the Cecil Cooper trade. I think it was last week too. So, Brewers fans might be wishing for days like that when they're acquiring some big names. Been pretty quiet so far for the Brewers there, JC. So, but
yeah, I wonder if we're going to get something. I mean, nothing really different from the meetings, so we'll see.
No, not at all. But I forgot that one. I wanted to pass along for one of our sports nuggets of the day here. Just kind of again recapping some of the Badger stuff that's happened in the last couple of days. Badger volleyball team, their season ends with a loss to Pitt, so the hopes of going back to back ending in that 5-set thriller the other night. And then Badger hoops with another W. I know the AP rankings are going to be coming out a little bit later on, but with their wins against Maryland and Iowa, and I know Iowa was missing a couple starters there, JC, but I think Wisconsin's got a case to be made to crack the top 25, don't you?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, beating a tough Iowa team, and then you go back to that Maryland game and a 13th ranked team, and Marquette before that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and gave Wake Forest a big run for their money and should have probably won that game too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they deserve at least to crack the top 25.
Yeah.
And this is your fun prototypical Badger team. They are showing that on a good night they're going to beat anybody, and we've seen a couple of good nights here the last couple games that they played.
Well, I think Greg Gard summed it up perfectly about describing his team. He called them like team drama, because they always. And I know he said the other night, I think it was after the Marquette or after the Maryland game, that they make it harder on themselves, which they tend to do quite a bit so far this year. But I think he's kind of summed up his team perfectly. It's
Right.
Nothing's coming easy for this ball club.
No, there's no reason that game probably should have went to overtime yesterday. You turn over the ball late, and Iowa hits a 3 to force OT, but you get the win. You gutted it out. You survived it because that could have been a gut punch.
Yeah.
And like I said, seen teams fold, but they managed to come back and get that win. And yeah, I mean, now you got some non-conference games coming up for the next 3 weeks, which it's holiday season. You got Lehigh this week, Grambling next week, and then Western Michigan the week after. And then you're back into it with Minnesota. So yeah, this is going to be a nice little. I think maybe a good break for this team already with some of the intense games that they've played. Really, the last 4 games, if not last. Man, before if
go
you
back
can
to
go back,
Thanksgiving,
the Dayton game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Kansas game that they barely lost. The USC game was close. They barely lose that Wake Forest game. The Marquette game's a thriller. The Maryland game's a thriller. The Iowa game's a thriller. Yeah. This team's like they're battling in the NCAA tournament right now. And so I think they'll probably enjoy the fact that they're only going to be playing 3 games in the next basically 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Badger football, we have some players declaring for the NFL draft, but 2 big ones. You got Keanu Benton and then Nick Herbig, which probably isn't too much of a surprise with this whole thing with those two. I mean, you factor in coaching changes and, kind of where their stocks are at this point. But I think the question is Badgers going to have enough players to play in their bowl game right now, Justice. Guys are either entering the transfer portal or declaring for the draft right now, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see who takes the field in what we're now 15 days away from that bowl game. But obviously they have enough players. It's just a matter of experience out there playing. But yeah, and this is expected. I mean, like you said, this is what happens when you have coaching changes. Obviously, the transfer portal being the first step, and then a lot of those guys who have that potential to play in the NFL are going to go give that a shot. So these are the expected shakeups here. Obviously the big news of the week was that Jim Leonhard is leaving after the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that was like 3 weeks ago, but that was like Tuesday.
Yeah.
So Wednesday or something like that. But yeah, so you have that happening as well, which again, it would have been great if he would have stayed. But I think everybody can understand him looking elsewhere and because he's going to have so many doors open to him. Mm-hmm. And it was the classy way that Jim Leonhard, the Twitter's note that he left. I don't think he's wanting to burn any bridges with Wisconsin, and I don't think he feels like from that he's, the bridges has been burned from Wisconsin to him. Mm-hmm. So I think Jim Leonhard is Mr. Badger, and as long as a lot of us would love to have him as the head coach, it's good to know that he's hopefully leaving there's still a good relationship with the school.
Right. Yeah, and then a couple of days after that, it was the report that the Badgers have their new offensive coordinator with Phil Longo, which is air raid type of offense now too. What were I know we talked about this on Thursday, and we kind of put up some polls questions on there. But what are your thoughts about the potential of Wisconsin going to a completely different style of offense? It's not the old school ground and pound. I mean, we're talking throwing the ball. Athletic quarterbacks, dual threat quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on that for Wisconsin?
It might be time. Mm-hmm. I think the running game worked up until about 4 years ago, and we've seen struggles. I mean, you still get big running backs. I'm not going to discount what Braylon Allen can do, and I think Braylon Allen can still put up big numbers with this. But I think it's time to kind of diversify that offense, get some passing attack in there, and that's. You can't keep doing the same thing,
right?
And hoping it's going to work when it hasn't worked for the last few years. The offense has been sputtering, so I think you need to add different dimensions to it and see what you can get. Obviously, if Braylon Allen, from all we've seen, is coming back, you're going to have a guy who's got the potential to be still a Heisman candidate after his freshman year. He was, but you spread that offense out, get those defenders away from the line of scrimmage. That's only going to help him.
Yeah,
in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in and is quarterback for this team next year too. So there's a lot of questions, so many questions. That'll be kind of answered in the next few months as they get close to that spring game there, and that's when we'll kind of get maybe a first look at what maybe we're going to see from the Badgers coming up this next season.
And I know what was been one of the biggest complaints for Badgers fans for the last few years. It's been trying to find a quarterback or trying to find wide receivers while you bring in an air raid type of offense where it's, a lot of throwing the football and making some deep throws. That's going to be more appealing to those quarterbacks and wide receivers to maybe come to Wisconsin.
Right. I mean, yeah, when you're handing the ball off and throwing it maybe 16 times, might not be the biggest, thing to recruit quarterbacks to come to your school.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's gonna open different doors. And I think Luke Fickle's got he's got a big task in front of him to rebuild this offense to something different than what it's been for 30 years,
Yeah.
32 years. It's been basically the same kind of offense. Even when Gary Anderson was here, it was still the same basically kind of offense because you had so many good running backs.
Right.
And again, this doesn't mean that you're not going to use your running backs. You have to have some kind of running game.
Hmm.
I just think it changes the quarterback position a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Gary Anderson came in. I think there was some talk about, hey, maybe like dual threat quarterbacks, and was it the read option sort of thing? That was the Tanner McAvoy era. That never
Right.
really
Yeah.
was at that point, but that was like the closest since maybe Russell Wilson. You had a
Yeah.
little bit of that.
And that's kind of been the problem with the Badgers since Russell Wilson. And Wilson obviously was just a 1-year thing, and it would have worked a perfect transfer, somebody coming in as the grad transfer and fitting the mold perfectly,
Hmm.
is that there's been so many what ifs or, guys who had that potential. Everybody's talking about them coming in, and I just don't think any of them lived up to the complete hype. Now, obviously, some of them had good moments. Joel Stave had good moments,
Right.
but he was never that transcended the program kind of guy.
Hmm.
He had his struggles. Graham Mertz comes in. Everybody's talking about Graham Mertz for how long? Before him, Hornibrook. Everybody's talking about Hornibrook for how long? So this isn't, this has been the problem with the Badgers is that there's been so much of these guys coming with potential, but maybe haven't fit the offensive mold the way that they need them. So yeah, again, Luke Fickle's gonna try to change it up, and we'll see what the future holds.
Hmm. Definitely. So, all right, Bucks wise, switching gears here a little bit. They did get the win against the Mavericks. I don't know how Brooke Lopez got that open on an inbounds pass for the game winner there, but hey, nice little draw up play. They did fall though last night to the Houston Rockets. Chris Middleton went out with a sprained ankle. They're calling it right now, but I mean, still, I mean, Bucks snapped their 4-game winning streak with that loss, but I don't think there's too much to be concerned about right here. Although it
No.
does, I mean, Joe Ingles sounds like he's getting closer to maybe making his debut for this Bucks team.
This team, obviously you don't like Chris Middleton going back out after just getting back into the lineup. That hurts. But
Hmm.
the fact that they're getting healthier in other areas as well, and yeah, the loss to Houston, it's tough. It's a road game. They'd been playing a tough stretch of games. You can give them that because
Hmm.
they're still sitting at 19-7,
Right.
and they're getting that win over the Mavericks. I think was probably the more the feather in the cap
Yep.
than it would be, unfortunately, going out and losing to the Rockets. But yeah, this team I think's fine, and I still think is in the upper echelon of this league.
Hmm.
And big game this week against the Warriors. That's tomorrow night.
Yep.
That'll be a one to kind of see where they're at and if everybody's there. So yeah, that's always the tough thing is you hope everybody plays in a marquee matchup like this because Giannis, Steph Curry, that's a pretty good marquee matchup you got when it comes to the NBA. And two of the last title winners right there. So yeah, it'll be a good one to see.
Definitely. So, all right. Tell you what, let's take a break and then we'll restart the Zoom here, JC, and then we'll get to a little bit more football talk here because I want to throw you a couple questions that we threw out in the first hour or so. So we'll restart the Zoom here. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get back to a little green and gold talk. Now that the bye week is over with, we got 4 more games. It's the last quarter of the season for the Packers. What are your expectations for these final 4? When do you start to kind of maybe get into the playoff hopes? Is like, let's see how they do against the Rams and Miami. They win these next 2. All right, I'm starting to buy into it a little bit more. Or are you kind of buying into it now because their chances improved just a little bit after the game yesterday? We'll hit that up coming up after these quick words. Coming up next hour, we'll get to a little studs and duds. Who's on your studs and duds list? You can hit us up with a quick text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912, or hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, or on the video stream. All right, JC. So bye week is over. Packers playoff chances actually improved a little bit yesterday with, I'm assuming, with the losses with the Giants and Seattle and such. But you got the red hot Detroit Lions right now that are still above them and such. At what point, Justice, with these final 4 games and for just you personally, do you kind of like start to maybe play around with that playoff machine, or you're like, hey, they might actually be able to kind of do this thing? Because you look at it, Washington's got a tough schedule. Giants have a tough schedule. Seattle has a tough schedule coming up here. The Lions, it might come down to that final game. We all know it doesn't matter unless Green Bay wins out at this point, but are you starting to maybe kind of slim just a little bit? Saying Green Bay might have a shot at this thing? Just a little bit? A little bit?
I want to say, like, I've never completely turned it off because of just how bad not bad, but just how compared to the top of the conference, the bottom has been around 500, if not below.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's always been that glimmer of hope. I still think it involves a lot of winning out.
Right.
You can maybe afford to lose one game at this point, but I think you got to win out. And yeah, I mean, you get the Rams game, you just got to get closer to 500. I think once 2 games out of 500, you keep that 8 loss on your record there, you've got a chance. I think if you get a 9th loss, I think you're in trouble.
Right.
So I think as long as you keep winning, there's that chance. It starts with the Miracle Rams team.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield's Rams team. How crazy is that?
That have a guy ending, I mean, good Lord. Yeah, like you said, too, just what? A day and maybe a dozen practice reps or something like that.
Right.
Boom.
If I'm Baker, I retire, walk off. That's your Hollywood ending.
Yep.
Comes in, leads them to victory in Hollywood, and that's it. But, yeah, I mean, the Dolphins and Vikings and Lions to end, it's tough. Dolphins and Vikings and Lions, oh my. That's a stretch. And this Lions team, holy cow, what a turnaround. The Lions team similar kind of maybe to the Vikings team in the opposite way. Well, that Lions team was never as bad as their record showed. I don't think this Vikings team's quite as good as their record will show, and I will compare this year's Vikings team to maybe last year's Packers team, where it was, scheduling and anomalies a little bit, I think one game that the Vikings hadn't played, that was a 1-possession game. I mean, that was the game against the Packers to start the season. So, I mean, they've been right there the whole year in danger of losing. So we saw it come back finally to bite them against the Lions this week. So, yeah, it's still going to be a really tough stretch for this Packers team. And, as much confidence as a win over the Bears gives you, it's not like the Packers were coming in playing real great football.
Right.
We're kind of all like that. That win over the Bears going into the bye helps, because then last thing you're thinking about is, they got the win. Yeah, they got to definitely play better football if they want to even, think the playoffs are going to happen.
For me, I'm playing around with the playoff machine, and I'm looking at this, but for me to kind of where it maybe starts to get a little real, they got to beat the Rams in Miami. Though the next 2 weeks, they got to come with W's. If they can beat Miami, I mean, it won't matter if they lose to the Rams, so I don't want to overlook the Rams. But if they win these next 2, especially against Miami, then it kind of starts to kick into gear here for a little bit for me.
Yeah, I mean, that Miami win would be big because that would show that they also are able to stop a running quarterback.
Yeah, or these speedy wideouts with Tyreek and was it Waddle over there too? So
yeah, I mean that game's scary on paper if you're looking at the Packers and the way their defense is played. That is like everything that can come back to just completely destroy them.
Yep.
But, first off, get the win over the Rams on Monday night. I mean, that's got everything built in for them. You get the extra long break, even an extra day having the bye.
Yep.
You're going to be as healthy as you've been since the start of the season. So, yeah, and you hope that, I don't know how much a week and a half is going to do anything for Aaron Rodgers, thumb in hand. I think this is an off season, has to heal kind of thing, but maybe it helps. The ribs will probably feel better.
Yeah.
Definitely having a break there. But, yeah, I mean, get the win over the Rams, and then, like you said, that Miami game is the one that would be huge. You lose to the Rams, and then I think all bets are
right
pretty much off.
Speaking of, you mentioned offseason, there sort of thing. So Jason Wilde, who's covered the Packers for many years, Wisconsin State Journal, Athletic, et cetera, et cetera. But he caught up with Jordan Love, and he's got an article that's posted up. It was late last night or this morning. But a couple of quotes from Jordan Love, and the main one there too was like, if Aaron does decide to come back next year, that him and his agent, Jordan Love and his agent, will kind of have to talk about what's next. The interesting part in this whole thing, Justice, is that I still believe, I mean, last looked it up on Google and everything, Aaron and Jordan have the same agent, David Dunn here. So, maybe Jordan might get a little bit of an early insight of what Rodgers' plans are. But I mean, here we are. I know it's a little bit different here, but 15 years later, 16, whatever it is, we're going to be kind of maybe in a similar offseason sort of thing. Is the aging veteran quarterback going to come back or not? And if he does, what do you do with the youngster? Business decision, straight up business decision. If Aaron comes back next year, if he decides I'm coming back, Jordan Love then comes and says, you know what? I want to be traded. You're Goody. Straight up business decision. How do you handle that?
Initial reaction of mine would be trade him.
Okay.
Get what you can. If you can get, I mean, again, you don't want to trade him for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his reputation around the league continues to grow. And I think if you can get a second round pick and something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think you entertain it.
Mm-hmm.
If you are all in on Aaron Rodgers, which I think they are, in my mind, they're still all in on Aaron Rodgers next year. Then I think you trade it, Jordan Love, and see what you can get, and maybe go out and get somebody else. Now, do I think that could come back to bite? Yeah, Jordan Love could go out and become the next Patrick Mahomes. We don't know because we haven't seen enough of him on the field. But you also could strike gold and get a good draft pick from that, and he, who knows? So I think if Aaron and Jordan Love's going to force his hand, I think you probably ultimately end up trading him and getting something in return.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you want. Well, I don't think you want the distraction of him being on the bench unhappy a whole year,
mm-hmm.
and then you have do we have to put him in? Then you almost feel like you have to play him at some point just to play him
mm-hmm.
during that season. So I don't know. It's a tough decision. Again, that's why I'm not getting paid to do that kind of stuff. But in my initially, if you forced your hand, you probably look at a trade.
And I think that's the big thing. The point that you mentioned there is like, does it become a distraction at that point? And to the devil's advocate side of that is like, okay, if you trade Jordan Love, then how much of a priority do you enter the 2023 draft, Justice, by going for a quarterback, knowing that you have a quarterback that might only play one more year? So do you use a high draft pick on a quarterback that's not going to help your quarterback in maybe his final year? Or do you get a player that maybe could potentially, you kind of go back and forth on that whole thing?
Yeah, here's my thing is, if I'm Jordan Love, I stay in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're in a good deal right now where you're not getting those mileage, that mileage of being out there getting hit. You're learning, and you can come in like an Aaron Rodgers and maybe wow right away once you get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want that opportunity to be next year and Aaron Rodgers is going to come back, I don't think it's going to happen in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, like you said, that would be then you have to, if you're the Packers, you got to make plan B for who's the next quarterback. But you have so many holes defensively maybe that you want to fill. I think you would still have to focus on defense to start the draft.
Mm-hmm. I feel, the other part in this too, I just thought of this is like, so we know Jordan's finishing his third season. Aaron was the starter his fourth season. There's similar timelines, right? But how much do you or should we factor in that Jordan Love's first year was the COVID year? No preseason. He wasn't even active for any of those games. Do we factor that in as like a complete wash? We don't even count that year. So really, maybe he's entering his like second year. Like this is his real second year. Should we factor that in? Do you think Green Bay's kind of factoring that in because he didn't have the preseason? It wasn't a normal offseason. Didn't have a lot of extra reps and that sort of thing. Do we have to, or should we factor that in? Do you think?
I almost feel like it was almost like a graduate season at a college. You know what I mean? Like he didn't get to really do a whole lot. And now, that he's been able to practice or get those reps in preseason and gets on the field, we've seen the leaps that he's made.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like a different quarterback compared to that first action we even saw him in preseason last year. So I think so.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it comes down to a matter of what Jordan Love wants to do
Mm-hmm.
and how much he wants to get out there and play, which I can understand. I mean, it's probably hard to just sit there biding your time. I just think at some point it would come off and it would pay off for him because he's going to come in and not have to prove himself to a different team. He could come into Green Bay and they're going to know exactly what they're getting with him.
Mm-hmm.
So it might take the pressure off a little bit. But yeah, if you want to play right away, I can understand that. And if he's in the position to force the hand, he might force the hand. But I think we got to, we'll have to see what Aaron's decision is too.
Right.
I think he's coming back. Just this is my gut feeling. No information at all. I just feel like this is not how he's going to want to end his career.
I agree.
The way the season has gone.
The more I think about it too, the more when you go back to Aaron's comments in the preseason and leading up to the regular season where he was trying to simmer the expectations a little bit on rookie wideouts, you almost feel like it was that, okay, get this year. I'm not saying wasting a year or anything like that, but I would have to imagine he knew at that point that there's going to be growing pains with rookie wide receivers and depending on those guys. And really their leaps might come in the second year or something like that. So I almost feel like now, and maybe this is just grasping at straws, but at that point, when you kind of look back at everything, he had to have known there was going to be a lot of growing pains with this offense and with these youngsters. And now that Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson especially are really growing into it, that maybe he was, knowing like, okay, I know I'm going to be here for a couple more years. This year is going to be a little ups and downs. Probably thought they'd still be a good team. But then maybe the second year with these youngsters, that's when they can really maybe start to be a little bit more of a consistent group.
Yeah, I think so. I think you've hit it, hit the nail right there, is that he kind of had this idea that this isn't going to be an easy road. And maybe, maybe there's that hopes you hit Christian Watson on that first pass.
Yeah.
And everything, everything seems like it's hunky dory and all that. But I think he knew. I think he knew that, he's the guy who's thrown to him in practice all the time. So he knew what the learning curve was for them. And now you're starting to see it happen. I mean, health issues have never helped him this year either.
Right.
Just not having everybody out on the field at the same time. So, come back off the bye here and maybe have the biggest chance to have the most guys on the field that you've seen and all your weapons. That might definitely can give you a glimpse of what would be potential for next year, starting with a clean slate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, oh man, who would have thought? Like I said in the first hour, Justice, and I know it's different circumstances and such, but I never would have thought 15 years later we'd be having a similar conversation heading into the offseason. Do you stick with the old guy or do you go with the younger guy?
No, I would never, after living through the Favre gate or whatever you want to call it, the Favre watch, I would have never thought it would come to this, but maybe I should have just thought in my head, it only ends one way, and it's usually not clean.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So, all right, shot clock's going to cut me off here, JC. Went by fast again, bud, but we always appreciate the time, sir. Always appreciate it.
No problem. Everybody out there, you have yourself a great week.
Awesome. All right, yeah, like I said, the Oscar music's gonna cut me off here. So coming up next hour, we'll kick it off with some studs and duds. Spit it out, Dan. Studs and duds. So text those on over. Who made your studs list? Who made your duds list? I've got a couple for each of them, but you play along as well. We'll get back to some more green and gold talk, as well as some Badgers, and we'll hit up a little baseball talk too. It's been quiet with the Brewers, but we'll throw a little baseball talk in there too. All right, 2 in, 1 more to go. We'll be back after these quick words. All right, here we go. Final hour on this Monday morning of December 12th, right? Yes. Cool. Eyesight's going. Yeah, 12th there. Appreciate you tuning in, however, wherever you may be tuning in and making this part of your day, part of your week here. Hopefully, you all had a fantastic weekend and you're ready to get going. We're going to get back to some more Green and Gold chat, but in case you're just joining us for the first time this morning, we threw out a couple of questions for you. Now that the bye week is over with, I know they got another game tonight and sort of thing, but come on now. Now that the bye week is over with, get your crystal balls out. How do you see these final 4 games, this final quarter of the regular season playing out for the Green and Gold? How do you see that playing out? At what point do you start to, or are you going to start to maybe kind of like buy into like, hey, they may actually sneak in the postseason? The Packers' chances improved slightly based off the games yesterday. Seattle losing, Giants losing. You look at the Giants' record or Giants' schedule. You look at the Washington schedule. You look at Seattle's schedule. Tough schedule. You got Detroit on there. This might be Detroit's one of their biggest games in the last few years, taking on the Jets this weekend. Jets also need a win to get back into the playoff conversation. They're right now on the outside looking in. So I think we all agree that it doesn't matter if Green Bay loses one of these games, but at what point is it after the Rams one? You're like, all right, starting to get into it. Or maybe is it after Miami? Or maybe it's not until Detroit. For me, I think it's like if they beat the Rams and they beat Miami, that's when it's going to start to really kick in that maybe, just maybe, they could sneak into this thing. The other question thrown out to all of you is, Jordan Love was telling Jason Wilde in an article that's up at the Wisconsin State Journal that if Aaron does decide to come back next year, Jordan and his agent, they'll have to talk about what's next. So let's assume Aaron does come back in 23. Let's say Jordan Love would like to be traded. From a business decision standpoint only. Keep your personal feelings aside from either Aaron or Jordan. From a business standpoint only. How do you handle that if you're Goody? Aaron comes back and Jordan says, I would like to be traded. How do you handle that scenario from a business standpoint? We'll get to that coming up just a little bit later on. But it's time for Studs and Duds. So my first stud is I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers. They dominated the Buccaneers yesterday, 35-7. Now, Deebo Samuel did get hurt. It sounds like that, at least some of the rumors or reports out there saying it's like a high ankle sprain and such, which, I mean, at first there were a lot of people wondering if it was a knee injury, and then you automatically think about, oh, man, worst case scenario when it comes to knee injuries, right? But you look at this 49ers team now. I mean, Brock Purdy going out there, 16 of 21, $185, 2 touchdown passes. Christian McCaffrey had a day, 14 carries, $119 on the ground. But this team, 49ers, you want to talk about a team getting it done right now. The 49ers, I mean, I was one of those. I'll raise my hand. As soon as Jimmy G went out, it was like, oh, boy. 49ers, they're probably, maybe they'll make the postseason, but they ain't going to go deep in there. But this is a team, a collective team that has just kind of like stayed the course, picking themselves up. Each player putting a little bit more on their shoulders. And a credit to Purdy going out there and doing his job and doing it well. For all the talk about, and I'm guilty of this too, and it's never, for sure thing, but, Mr. Irrelevant here, that was the last pick in the draft, Brock Purdy. Yeah. You never know when your number is going to be called, and you always got to be able to go out there and perform and take advantage of the situation. You know, a lot of people just assume 7th-round picks, especially the last pick in the draft, they ain't going to amount to anything. They ain't going to do anything. Brock Purdy making things interesting right now. So, studs, my first stud is the 49ers because, and that's a credit to Kyle Shanahan and then that D'Amico Ryans, the entire coaching staff. That locker room, they've overcome a lot of injuries and a lot of obstacles so far this year, and they look like a dangerous team, even with the team being on their 3rd quarterback already this year. Whew. That's looking good. My other stud, I got 2 of them, going with 2 and 2 here for studs and duds. My other stud, got to give a shout, Caleb Williams winning the Heisman Trophy this past weekend. Stud, easy. He received 504 first place votes. It was pretty it was pretty much his to lose. 544 first place votes. Max Duggan from TCU got 188 first place votes there. So overall points, Caleb Williams 2,031. Max had 1,420. CJ Stroud finishing in 3rd. Stetson Bennett finishing in 4th. So my other stud, going with Caleb Williams. Duds, Fran McCaffrey from Iowa. I went down a dark hole yesterday after the game and such, and I just kind of Twitter searched all Fran McCaffrey and such because he got teed up. That guy has got a temper about him. I mean, holy moly! But look at Iowa fans love him. I mean, Iowa was back. I mean, Iowa fans were actually going, saying like, Fran McCaffrey and better than Greg Gard and that sort of thing. Whatever, each to their own. But I mean, this dude, Fran McCaffrey, he gets so animated and so, I don't know, like everybody's having fun with like the pictures, the screenshots of his look at when he got teed up and such yesterday. But it's like, dude, holy moly, I don't know of another coach, honestly, off the top of my head, of another basketball coach besides Bobby Knight, maybe back in the day, but currently, who gets so riled up and so pissed off a lot of times than Fran McCaffrey. But dude, you gotta calm down there for a minute, okay? Just take a chill pill. And I get it. Certain times, they kind of get, try to back up their teams and maybe motivate them and that sort of thing. It's all part of the strategy and such. But man, oh man, Fran McCaffrey. Holy cow. My other dot. So this is a personal one here. All right, I'm going to let you into a little bit of a background here in the Kasper household. So Friday night. Okay, we were at a drive. We picked up the kiddo. We were doing some Christmas shopping and such, and just gonna grab something quick to eat. Drive to. Made the order. Right, I'm not gonna tell you where or anything like that, but we made the order, and we're sitting waiting to go up, and all of a sudden, boom. We get rear-ended in a drive-through line, okay? In a drive-through line. Get out, doesn't, we look in the rearview mirror, it's a dude. He's not acknowledging it, doesn't get out, just stays in his car, whatever. I get out. I look to see if there's damage or anything. Can't see anything, maybe a little bit of scratch here. And I look at the guy, I'm like, dude, what's going on? He's like, what? I'm like, he hit us. Denied it. He completely denied it. I'm like, so did, like a ghost or somebody just where are we imagining that we got hit or something? And he said, yeah, you are. All right. So call the cops. Guy pulls up right next to me, starts cussing and swearing at me. Dude takes off. Could tell he was wasted. I'm just drunk. Don't know what happened. We know that the police were able to catch him and such, but we don't know what happened afterwards. But dud, first of all, driving like you were just completely out of it. But second, completely denying the whole thing. I mean, come on, dude. That was just a dud. And it would have been a whole lot worse because we had the kiddo in the back. So, dud to whoever that guy was. And hopefully he got a little weekend in the clinker, if you know what I mean. So, but that was a dud from Friday night. So your studs and duds, you can hit us up with a text, 715-830-1912. We got Press Pass we'll get to as well. So if you got a question that you can ask anybody in the sports world and get a legit answer, we'll wave that magic wand and we'll get them to truthfully answer your sports question. What would it be? You get one Press Pass question for the week. Who would you ask it to? So we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. Should also note, too, in case you missed this last night, but Ole Miss head coach Mike Leach was hospitalized. It's kind of not fully known yet. I mean, I know there's rumors, there's reports out there, speculation that, that maybe he had a heart attack or anything like that, but he is, some of the reports out there is that he's in critical condition after this medical emergency. Robbie Falk, who covers Bulldogs for 24/7 Sports, had tweeted out that Mike Leach needs a miracle. Continue to don't know the full-on details, but others in the college football world have been tweeting out their thoughts and some other stuff out there, like Lincoln Riley, prayers for my good friend Mike Leach. Please keep Coach and his family in your prayers. Brian Kelly, please keep Mike Leach in your prayers. We are thinking about Mike, his wife Sharon, and all of his family, friends, and players. It didn't sound good. Again, don't know the full on. I don't want to go based off of speculation and Twitter reports and rumors and that sort of thing. But one thing's for sure, it didn't sound good. So hopefully everything's going to be okay with Mike Leach, though. But Mike Leach, I know Brandon, our good buddy Brandon Berg's a huge fan of Mike Leach. I love Mike Leach's, clips where he's talking about Bigfoot or raccoons or the best Halloween candy. I mean, the guy is a character. He's a lot of fun, and you see a lot of reporters, after that news kind of coming out, and they talked about their interactions with him. I mean, it looks like a guy that just, I don't know, like has some fun and such, goes out there and such. But I love his video clips where, he's talking about Bigfoot or raccoons or I know the Halloween candy one always gets brought up during Halloween and such. But hopefully everything's okay with Mike Leach there too. And then another more sad news too was a few days ago, soccer journalist Grant Wall passed away while he was covering the World Cup. U.S. soccer journalist Grant Wall passing away. So you probably heard about it the last few days. A lot of, I know, DA was talking about it right before we popped on and such. But just awful situation. Awful situation. So wanted to make sure to pass those along in case that you missed out on that. So, but all right, let's take a quick break, and then coming up, we'll get to touch on the Badgers and the Bucks again here a little bit. Then we'll get back to some more football chat. I'm looking for a couple of responses, answers, thoughts from you all out there. At what point do you start to kind of maybe buy into or get on that playoff bandwagon? Are you just not going to? They're still alive. You look at the schedules for the teams ahead of them; they're pretty tough. Will it be after the Miami game if they take care of business against the Rams in Miami? Will you kind of maybe get on there then, that wagon? Or maybe it's like, nope, they got to beat the Rams, Miami, and Minnesota first, and then we'll get into that Detroit. If they're still in it for that final week and they're winning and they're in, then I'm in there. Then I'm on that bandwagon. Or maybe you are now. Maybe you're starting to play around with that playoff machine out there and trying to figure out scenarios. Second, business decision only. Aaron comes back next year. Jordan Love asks for a trade. How do you handle it? From a straight-up business decision. Keep the personal feelings about Aaron and Jordan off to the side. You're Goody. Straight-up business decision. How do you handle it? So we'll hit that up too. We'll take a quick break. And we'll start off with some Badger stuff coming up after these quick words. Don't forget, put it on your calendars. December 23rd, Festivus, Friday, December 23rd. We're gonna be at Hy-Vee doing the show 6A to 9A. Then we'll be back doing a live podcast from 2 to 3. But if you stop on by, I'll give you a ticket for a free tap beer over there. Plus, you can enter to win some Bucks tickets, courtside Bucks tickets that day. That's right, courtside. So let's do a little get together, Festivus get together, holiday get together for the best listeners out there. Put it on your calendars, December 23rd. We'll be at the Do Dodge 6A to 9A, then back from 2 to 3 p.m. So looking forward to that. We will have the metal bowl. We'll have the airing of grievances, feats of strength, all that good stuff. So just saw this. University of Texas basketball coach Chris Beard was arrested and charged with assault on a family member early Monday. Man. Alleged that he strangled a person at a home in Terrytown. Man, wow. That's yikes. Oh, not good. All right. Let's head up some Badgers and some Bucks chat coming up here before we get to some Packers chat, because we got a few texts to get to regarding the Packers chat here. So again, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got Badger volleyball. Their run ends with a loss against Pitt. So their season or their hope of going back-to-back in title defense ends with their loss in that 5-set match against Pittsburgh. That ended over the weekend. Badger Hoops, they beat Iowa last night, even though Iowa was down a couple of starters. But nonetheless, Badgers picking up another W. Greg Gard determined his team drama. And, yeah, I don't think that's too far off in his assessment right now. But I would have to imagine with the latest rankings, the AP rankings, I haven't seen them yet. I don't know if they dropped yet, but I would think that the Badgers, when you factor, their win against Maryland in, and then, with this win against Iowa, that they should get into the top 25. I would think so, but you never know. Weirder things have happened, but I think they would jump up there. Badger football, as we talked about a little bit earlier, as they're getting ready for their bowl game, more players they are declaring for the NFL draft. The two big ones, Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig, declaring for the NFL draft. So I think those two are going to be interesting to follow throughout the whole draft process. Obviously, teams are always looking for pass rushers. Could Nick Herbig be the next good pass rusher to come out of Wisconsin, joining, like TJ Watt and such? And then Keanu Benton, too. I'll be curious to see where his draft prospects come. Will kind of come down the line when we get into draft season in the spring and after the Super Bowl and such. But I think he'll be a fairly high draft pick at this point in time, too. But I'd be curious to see how many what the Badgers lineup is going to look like with their bowl game coming up here. I mean, they'll have enough players, but be curious to see who's going to be lining up and the playing experience amongst those players and such. But Bucks wise, they did fall last night to the Houston Rockets. Perhaps the biggest thing, Chris Middleton out with a left ankle sprain. We'll see what, I know he's listed like day to day and that sort of thing, but Bucks may decide to be a little bit more cautious with him. Obviously, not what you want to see after he just returned, a few games ago. But at least it doesn't sound like it's anything too serious. But I got to imagine maybe the Bucks will be a little bit cautious at this point with Middleton. Maybe not rushing back. I mean, they look at how they started the season without him, right? And not saying that Chris Middleton isn't a vital or important player. I think they need him when it comes to playoff time, but I think you can afford to be a little bit cautious and not have to rush him back or anything at this point. So, but also last night too, Giannis, another achievement. He surpassed 15,000 career points. 15,000 career points. I was kind of curious to see where he's at on this list because LeBron is going to break Kareem's record. Kareem still has a record, 38,387. LeBron's at 37,559. So I was kind of curious to see if where Giannis ranked on that list, and it's over double of what he's got. But just for funsies, Giannis right now, according to NBA.com, he is 146th on the all-time scoring list. He will most likely, Anthony Davis is at 143, but he will most likely, in the near future, pass like Sharif Abdur-Rahim. Remember him from the Grizzlies back in the day? Tim Hardaway. You got Walt Frazier. He just turned 28. Do you think Giannis will, when it's all said and done, finish his career in the top, let's say top 25? No, maybe higher because, you're looking at 25. Okay, 25 is Ray Allen, 24,368 points. Should we go even 15th? Tim Duncan, 26,496. Do you think when it's all said and done, when Giannis's career is in the books, Giannis will be in the top 15, top 10 scoring all time in NBA history? Do you think he'll get there? The next highest current player, I guess will get top 10. I think he'll get in the top 10. You got Carmelo Anthony, who's actually 9th on this list, and he's got 28,289 points. We just went with LeBron, but then you're looking at who would be like the next. Kevin Garnett's 19th at 26,000. Trying to see who's like the next active player. James Harden's 28th at 23,743. Russell Westbrook is 29th at 23,659. The Chief, Robert Parrish, 30th on this list. Love it. I think Giannis is going to get top 15. I think he'll get top 10. I think Giannis is going to finish in the top 10. Does he have a legit shot at maybe catching Jordan and getting into the top 5? Jordan's 5th right now with 32,292. So Jordan played in just over 1,072 games. Let's look at Giannis and how many games he has played so far. Giannis has played in 678. 678. Yeah, I think Giannis is going to get top 10. I think he will finish when it's all said and done. He healthy, no major injuries that could derail his career or anything like that. Giannis will finish in the top 10 in NBA scoring history, and I think he has a legit shot at getting top 5. I think so. Dirk is 6, 31,560. I don't think he'll catch LeBron and break that record or anything like that, but I think Giannis has a legit shot. I really do. All right, let's do it. Let's do a little press pass as we get into some football chat here. You got one question you can ask a sports person out there, knowing that you would get a legit answer. That you would get a legit answer in return. 100%. Like we can wave that magic wand out there. What would it be? My question would be to Goody. And what would the offer have to be for you to seriously consider possibly trading Jordan Love? What would that offer have to be? We know I don't think he would be able to get a first-round pick, but I guess never say never. Maybe you get a desperate team. Maybe it's a back-end first-round pick, something like that. I don't know. I don't feel like it. But what would have to maybe be the starting point in this whole thing? Does it have to start at a second-round pick at least? Maybe a mid or an early second-round pick? Like I used the example of Jimmy G earlier. Jimmy G had a little bit more playing time, a little bit more playing experience. We saw a little bit more from him before he was traded from the Patriots to the 49ers. But the Patriots drafted him second round. They flipped him to the 49ers for, I think it was at the second round or second pick in the second round. So, I mean, they actually improved in terms of where they drafted Jimmy G and what pick they got in return. That's not always the case. Like at this point, I don't think anybody would give up a first round, again, unless it's a back-end first round, maybe possibly for Jordan Love. But I would ask Goody, like, what would it take? Or what's the starting point have to be for you to seriously consider possibly trading Jordan Love? And that's kind of one of the questions that we threw out there in the first hour was, if Aaron comes back next year for 2023 and Jordan Love entering year 4 says to the Packers, you know what? I'd like to go somewhere else. I'd like to be traded. I want to play. I want a starting opportunity. I want it now. I don't want to wait another year. I think it's just time to move on. From a business standpoint, not from a personal standpoint, how do you handle that situation? How would you handle that situation? Jordan Love doesn't have a whole lot of power in this situation, if you will. I mean, he can throw a fit. He can become a distraction if he wants to go that route. But in terms of like leverage, contract-wise and that, not a whole lot. I mean, for 2023, he's only going to cost on the cap $3.9 million. Now, Green Bay will have to decide this offseason, though, to pick up that fifth-year option, which will be a nice pay raise. First-round pick, fifth-year option. It's going to be a nice pay raise for him, no doubt about it. So they will have to commit to that. But in terms of like a 2023 cap or anything like that, I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. He's not scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent until 2025. So really, Green Bay can really hold on to him for 2 more years if they wanted to. He doesn't have a whole lot other than maybe throwing a fit or becoming a distraction to try to force his way out of there, which I don't know if he will do that. Who knows, though? So I guess to me, when I look at it, it would have to take a very serious offer for me to contemplate seriously trading Love. Because, I mean, if a team's going to offer a 4th rounder, no thanks. 3rd rounder, I'm probably saying no, unless there's more attached to it. I mean, if you're talking straight up 3rd, I'm probably saying no. 2nd rounder, I think that's where it has to at least start. It has to start. Because again, it's not that much of a cap hit, even in a cap-stricken year in 2023. I mean, even if you move on, move on from it, you're only saving about, basic math, about $800,000. Cap hit for Jordan Love's 3.9. Dead cap hit, 3.1. So, I mean, you're not really making up a whole lot of ground. 2024 is when that cap hit will really kind of pop up there. We know that. So, otherwise, I'm holding on to him. I'm holding on because, okay, you get Aaron back for 2023. Then you go into the draft. You have to address quarterback high in the draft again, where it won't help you out with your aging quarterback for the upcoming season. You're going to have to use a pick on a quarterback, one of the quarterbacks maybe in the first round and such. And you're not going to be able to get a player that's going to be able to contribute on the field right away because he's going to be sitting on the bench. Nah. And maybe a lot of it will just actually depend on where Green Bay finishes this regular season and how high their draft pick is going to be. I mean, if they finish out, let's say they get a top 5 pick, top 6 pick, something around there, and Aaron decides to come back, then I think that maybe changes things a little bit. It potentially changes things just a little bit there where you're like, okay, yeah, we can move on from Love now, and we'll get a quarterback here or there and blah, blah. I don't know, maybe. There's so many different routes you can go with this whole thing. But I guess for me, from a straight up business side of things, Love doesn't have a whole lot of say in this, doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. It's still cheap to hold on to him for 2023. You pick up the 5th-year option. Cap hit doesn't come out until 2024. Hold on to him, and he's going to be your starter in 2024. Unless for some reason Aaron comes out this offseason and says, nope, I'm going to play 2 more years. That's another what if in this whole situation. But again, you have to trust him like he's actually going to commit to 2 years. I don't think you're going to be able to get a commitment. The other question we kind of threw out there too is, at what point do you start to maybe kind of get on that playoff bandwagon, or you're like, hey, maybe they can actually pull this off. Maybe they can get to the postseason. I'll admit it. I've been goofing around with the playoff machine. I've been coming up with different scenarios. I'm kind of getting sucked in when you look at the schedules for these upcoming, other teams, with the Giants, with Washington and Seattle, et cetera, and you play around with that playoff machine because their schedules are a little difficult, and it's hard not to maybe kind of get your hopes up. It's hard not to. They got tough schedules. Green Bay's got tough schedules. But I think realistically, even though their odds went up slightly yesterday, realistically, when I'm looking at it, I'm kind of eyeing that Miami game. They got to beat the Rams, though. I believe they got to win out. I believe the Packers got to win out. But if they beat the Rams and then they beat Miami, then it gets for real. I think, in my opinion. Then it gets real. We look at Washington's schedule, kind of looking at the teams ahead of them, right? Ahead of Green Bay right now. Washington's schedule, they've got the Giants this weekend. I wish I was paying attention a little bit more, but they were actually in DA's show before we popped on here. I think it was about at 5:30 or something. They were talking about this Giants and Washington game coming up for the weekend, and just how different the playoff odds would change depending on a win or a loss. I think it was the Giants. If they lose to Washington, their playoff odds drop all the way down in the 20s. But if they were to win, it's 80-some%. That's how big this game is for Washington and New York. So you look at this, that tie screwed up some things. But you got the Giants, you've got the Commanders. Let's look at Washington's schedule. Washington taking on the Giants. Well, then they take on the 49ers in San Francisco. Then Washington's home against Cleveland. I don't know how to gauge that game at this point. I don't know what version of Cleveland's going to show up. And then the final game, you got the Cowboys. But the Cowboys might not have anything to play for, because if Philly already has the division wrapped up and the number 1 seed wrapped up, the highest the Cowboys can finish is 5th. The top wild card spot. So Cowboys might not even be playing their main guys or their main players in that game. So that's a hard one to kind of gauge too. Then you got the Giants schedule coming up here. As we said, they got the Commanders. Then they're at Minnesota on Christmas Eve. Then they got the Colts. Again, what version of the Colts is going to show up? And then they finish up the season against the Eagles. And again, will the Eagles have anything to play for? That week leading up to it, it's going to be that same old conversation that we have almost every single year. Almost every single year. The Eagles have that bye week. Do they play their starters? Do they not play their starters? Do they play their starters a little bit? Is 2 weeks off too much? You're going to hear it. So, what version of the Eagles are we going to have for that final week against the Giants? We don't know. And then you got Seattle, their upcoming schedule. Carolina helping out Green Bay a little bit yesterday by beating Seattle. And Seattle's next 2 weeks, actually next 3 weeks, pretty tough, especially the first 2. Short week, they got the 49ers. Can Brock Purdy do it again? Then you're at the Chiefs for Christmas Eve. And then the Jets come to town. Jets right now playing for their playoff hopes. They're right on the outside looking in. And then they finish up the season against the Rams. And then, believe it or not, we do have to talk about the Lions. Lions were my Monday motivational pick. But these next couple weeks for sure are going to be big games. And perhaps this weekend, I mean, you're talking about 2 teams who are just on the outside of the postseason looking in. Lions visiting the Jets. This is actually a pretty darn good game on paper. You've got the Lions in that offense, the Jets in that defense. Both are just on the outside looking in. And then Carolina on New Year's Eve going up against the Lions. Carolina controls their destiny now. They win out. They win the division. Not Tampa Bay. Carolina. Carolina wins out. They're going. So this is like playoff mode now for the Panthers. Pesky team. So there is a little bit of intrigue. But we know Green Bay's got a tough schedule too. Green Bay is actually favored by 8, again, depending on which service you look at. The one I was looking at, Green Bay is favored by 8 against the Rams. But then I would argue after the Rams, the next 3 weeks, tough. Miami, Minnesota with their offense. I mean, Minnesota's defense has been giving up a ton of yards as of late. And then Detroit with their offense. 3 of their 4 are at Lambeau Field, but you can make the case, has Lambeau Field been that much of an advantage for Green Bay the last couple of years, maybe especially in the postseason there. But who knows? As Aaron said, not dead yet. But for me, they got to win out. Otherwise, boy, do they need a lot of freaking help if they lose one of these games. But could it be actually where we enter that final week in the regular season, January 8th? Packers Lions again. Winner decides who goes to the playoffs. Who knows? This has been a weird NFL season so far. And as we enter the final quarter of this, and I know we got a game tonight, but as we enter the final quarter of this crazy season, you've got Philadelphia is the only team who has clinched a playoff spot in the entire NFL. Just a one-loss Philadelphia Eagles team, 12-1. Only one team has been officially eliminated in the NFC. That's Chicago. Everybody else is technically still alive. AFC, 2 teams have been eliminated. Houston Texans, no big surprise, but the Denver Broncos also eliminated. Probably one of the biggest surprises in terms of, I should say, probably one of the biggest disappointments of this season. But you look at it, you got Buffalo, Kansas City, top 2 in the AFC. No big surprise. Baltimore, 3, no big surprise. Tennessee, still there at 4th. Cincinnati, hanging on. They're playing some really good football right now, 9-4. Miami, even with the loss last night in that 6th spot. Chargers, they overtook the Jets for that 7th spot. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars are like in this thing too. The Jets are the first team on the outside looking in. You got the Patriots, depending on what happens tonight, but they'll still be that ninth team, and then it's Jacksonville, for crying out loud. NFC side of things, Philadelphia, Minnesota, your top two. San Francisco, they look dangerous. They look tough right now. They're 3. Tampa Bay's 4th because somebody has to be 4th from that NFC South. Dallas at 5. Right now it's Washington at 6. The Giants at 7. Seattle's the first team on the outside looking in. Then it's Detroit. Then it's Green Bay. It's going to be a weird final quarter. It's going to be a really weird final quarter of this regular season. All right. We got to take our final break. Then we'll cover the bases after these quick messages. Monday Night Football tonight has the Patriots taking on the Cardinals. Patriots looking for their 7th win to maybe make that playoff chase in the AFC a little bit more interesting for one of those final spots there. No Bucks game tonight. We won't have that, but they will be back home for a game tomorrow night against the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry and company before they're back on the road, which should be, obviously with Golden State, you got a lot of star power there. But then Thursday is going to be a really fun game, taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. Giannis, Ja Morant and company. That should be a really fun one. In fact, I mean, you look at the Bucks' upcoming schedule here, and it kind of loses a little bit because Utah's 3-7 in their last 10. But Golden State right now is the 8th team in the Western Conference. So a little bit of a West Coast trip here for the Bucks coming up here. But you got Golden State, the 8th seed in the West right now. Memphis on Thursday, who is currently the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Then you got Utah on Saturday, the 9th seed in the Western Conference. And then a week from today, they'll be going up against the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, which is still the New Orleans Pelicans. 7 wins in a row, 9-1 in their last 10 games. That could also be another pick for a stud with the studs and duds list. So Bucks kind of, getting their West Coast stretch started off last Friday against the Mavericks, got the win, loss against Houston. Now you got Golden State, you got Memphis, you got Utah, you got New Orleans, all right now playoff teams. And then right after that, doesn't get any easier, but I love it because you got Cleveland on the 21st. Then you got Brooklyn on the 23rd. Cleveland's the 3rd team in the East. Brooklyn, the 4th team in the East right now. And then Christmas, Boston. Number 1 team in the East. This is a tough but fun part of the schedule here for the Bucks. You'd like Chris Middleton back, or you'd like Chris Middleton available for these games. We'll see how long he's going to be out with that sprained ankle. Day-to-day sort of thing. But these games all the way up until Christmas, these are fun ones. These are going to be some good matchups for December for the Bucks here. A lot of them are on the road because, from tomorrow all the way to Christmas, only 2 games at home. That's Golden State and that's Utah. All this week. Otherwise, going to be on the road after that. So, all right, we'll have a busy Tuesday coming at you. Tomorrow, Grind My Gears Tuesday. We'll get to your Grind My Gears. Also on a Tuesday, we'll do bench start cut, and then we got a pop quiz Tuesday. So we got all that stuff coming up. We'll catch up with RJ, all things Badgers too. Lots to catch up on there with him. Basketball, football, volleyball, hockey, you name it. DP and the Danettes, they're up next. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll do this again tomorrow morning, shortly after 6. We'll talk to you then.